Welcome to Book 2 in the Horrors and Hoagies series, Tortured Souls. In this, we will cover the 5th chapter. In this book, we encourage you to immerse yourself in the exciting events that unfold. From thrilling action scenes to heart-pumping moments of suspense, Tortured Souls is sure to keep you on the edge of your seat. We appreciate your support and hope that you continue to enjoy the journey we have in store for you. Thank you for enjoying the story, and we look forward to sharing more with you in the upcoming chapters. Chapter 6, A Stage for Inquisition.
Papa Mac's night was ruined. He was in the middle of the stage, surrounded by actors frozen with fear. He had recently finished giving the costume maker a piece of his mind for messing up King Lear's outfit. She was crying because she couldn't meet Mac's high standards. It was one more problem adding to the chaos of his theater production. It was starting to annoy him. Mac was busy creating chalk outlines for the costume designer to use on a small board, ensuring there wouldn't be any more problems before taking the entire costume off the actor and handing it to the flustered woman. She thanked him before hurrying backstage with the marked outfit. The actor, who was now mostly undressed, stayed put, but he felt the heat of Papa Mac's intense gaze. Jimmy Blacktooth arrived on stage with Mac's henchman. He was visibly anxious and fidgeted with his old driver's cap while spewing rehearsed lies.
They must have entered through the hole. We noticed debris where they blasted the vault's wall. It was a swift job. I couldn't have prevented it. Half of the inventory was already gone, and no one was in sight when we arrived.
Jimmy's rambling was halted by a switchblade snapping open. He glanced around at the sinister-looking mafia vampires surrounding him before seeing Lorenzo's nonchalant grip on a silver knife. Trying to ignore the threat of impending danger, he shifted his attention to an actress at the far end of the stage with a withering glare that could have set him on fire.
Looks like I'm on my own,
he muttered. When he faced the intimidating mob boss, he frantically tried to find the right words. He had to figure out a way, any way to protect himself. But all he could manage was a feeble attempt to defend himself against the boss's piercing gaze.
We checked the place thoroughly and searched for any signs of them. But, boss, there was nothing. You have to trust me. They vanished into thin air. The explosion from the bomb destroyed the freezer. Well, we salvaged what we could, but the rest had to be discarded.
Papa Mac's face contorted with pure evil, radiating a fierce, intense hatred. The guy in front of him couldn't hold it together and wet himself, tears streaming down his face. Papa Mac leaned in, his words dripping with menace.
Jimmy, who talked you into this? Who meant more to you than family? Who stabbed me in the back?
By the time Papa Mac finished his interrogation, his voice had transformed into a rough growl with a touch of Italian flair. Jimmy could hardly find his voice. He was consumed by terror.
Nobody, boss.
Jimmy gasped for breath, frantically scanning the area for someone who would come to his rescue.
I stumbled upon it like that, and...
Mac's demand shook the entire theater.
Who convinced you?
Jimmy's face was a mess of tears, sweat, and fear. He was trembling and shuddering uncontrollably, with his one good fang awkwardly hanging out of his mouth, dripping with saliva and blood. He was too scared to speak, knowing his dark soul was about to face its ultimate punishment. Lorenzo approached Jimmy from behind and tapped his shoulder, offering a glass jar to Papa Mac. Jimmy recognized the item immediately, having been in charge of thousands of them until recently. The jar still bore traces of an anonymous donor's blood from the blood vault Jimmy had overseen. Papa Mac swiftly retrieved the object from Lorenzo's outstretched hand. Raising it above Jimmy's head, he captured the luminosity emanating from a stage light as it danced upon its surface. The refracted glow bathed Jimmy's countenance, revealing the damning truth of the evidence that had sealed his fate. The esteemed vampire expressed concern.
Jimmy, the casino on the north side has encountered numerous issues since we provided you shelter. Every predicament can be traced back to you. You have reported incidents of robbery, muggings, inadequate planning, and now a full-on eye.
Papa Mac's face twisted into a venomous smile.
Your accountant's records are top-notch, Jimmy. I'm going to have a conversation with the guy.
Lorenzo managed a stern shake of his head.
Oh, I guess he missed my chance. Once I saw him, he was so friggin' thrilled that he immediately sent Lorenzo down to collect you.
The venerable vampire bore a curious expression that reflected his lack of amusement at Jimmy's continued existence.
You have stolen and laundered money right off my table. Instead of having the courage to ask, you simply helped yourself to something he might have willingly given you. And all of this to pay off your dingy, run-down dive bar. It sickens me to see you and your low-life friend preying on innocent people. It must make you feel powerful, like a big-shot bloodsucker.
Mac's disappointment was palpable as he finished speaking. He had always believed in his family and had carefully chosen him, making Jimmy's betrayal a heavy blow. Each letdown chipped away at the old man's cold, black heart. It had taken years to establish the blood banks, which allowed the family to coexist with humanity without resorting to violence or terror. Lorenzo's magnum opus, conceived shortly after his relocation to America, presented a groundbreaking concept. The ingenious idea enabled Mac's community to sustain a comfortable lifestyle by relying on an endless supply of donated blood as long as it remained fresh and abundant. Collaborating with Lord Stein, a prominent supernatural figure in the city, Lorenzo diligently refined and perfected this notion. This remarkable accomplishment was one of New York's supernatural community's most significant political and holistic triumphs. Well-fed vampires tended to be more rational than those who were hungry, which resulted in fewer deaths in the city. As a result of the significantly decreased number of casualties, Mac's vampires were practically undetectable to most. Donations to the bank were also a bargaining chip, allowing individuals in debt to the family the opportunity to offer blood instead of being subjected to violence by gangsters. Some individuals even voluntarily contributed to the cause to help maintain Mac's dominance in the city. Papa Mac stepped back and gazed down at the man with disdain.
One of my trusted associates informed me of your unscrupulous activities.
He stated calmly.
I know about your secret meetings with individuals from the north and your involvement in smuggling people into my city. It seems you and your kind have been feeding on innocent victims, chained to velvet walls like cowardly bottom feeders, right under my nose.
The calm began to crumble, giving way to an increasing fury.
You gave money to smugglers and human traffickers my hard-earned cash. You tarnished my family's reputation with your deceitful deeds.
Mac's anger erupted towards Jimmy, hitting him like a powerful gust of wind. Consumed by rage, Papa Mac violently shattered the blood jar on the stage, reducing it to mere fragments. Papa Mac's anger subsided to a serious expression.
Did you believe you could handle it alone?
Lorenzo stepped out from behind Jimmy while he pulled a strange device out of his pocket for presentation to his boss.
Dr. Artem sends his kind regards.
Lorenzo's words had a hidden meaning that every vampire grasped. The impending events made everyone uneasy. Of course, no one would willingly offer themselves for Artem's crazy experiments, but they all agreed to use Jimmy as the test subject.
That Artem is like his father. It's heartwarming when the younger ones show interest in us elderly folks. How's Stein's doctor doing these days?
The device Lorenzo held was the newest creation that came out of a mutual scientific endeavor and provided a solution for the present problem.
I'm not sure, boss.
Lorenzo said with a shrug.
I haven't talked to him in a while, but he did deliver your special order and even gave a demo on how to use it effectively when the moment calls for it.
He took his place behind Jimmy and met his boss's gaze, ready for the go-ahead to start the experiment. Papa Mac had a final chat with Jimmy Blackfang, telling him bluntly,
You're a complete idiot for trying to trick me, and you did a lousy job at it.
Without wasting time, Lorenzo swiftly snatched Jimmy's head and inserted the device into his neck, collecting a good amount of Jimmy's dark blood in a few seconds. After finishing, Lorenzo swiftly removed the device from Jimmy, now trembling with fear and leaking. He examined the device and gave a nod of approval to his boss, indicating the device had functioned as intended. Content with his work, he retrieved a slender glass vial and sealed it with a black rubber stopper. After Jimmy's hopeful inquiry, he couldn't contain his gratitude towards his boss. His panic had dissipated, replaced by a jagged smile. Despite being caught, Jimmy felt he had gotten away with it. His thoughts were abruptly interrupted by the sharp pain of Lorenzo's silver blade piercing his chest. As he disintegrated into ash, Lorenzo whispered,
"Safe to say, you're fired, Jimmy."
After finishing, Lorenzo shouted to someone behind the scenes,
"Hey, can you grab me a broom or something? This fink is wandering all over the stage."
A few creepy laughs burst from the audience. The atmosphere in the room suddenly became lighter. Actors and actresses returned to the stage and began memorizing their lines. A stunningly elegant woman walked gracefully towards Papa Mac and gently placed her alluring hand on his shoulder. Their gaze met, holding each other's eyes long enough for her modest demeanor to redirect his attention. It was the least she could offer him. She was one of many who the gangster rescued. In her perspective, it was only fair that she assisted wherever she could. Taking the man's mind off of murder and getting it back to stage play would ease his mind. Papa Mac took a deep breath before beginning a hunt for the tailor. Something had to be done about the lead's costume. Lorenzo's face lit up as he got his hands on the dustpan and broom. One of the little goblins, who worked as the theater's cleaning crew, handed him to him with a smile. He watched as the beautiful actress took a moment to spit on Jimmy's ashes. It was a crude gesture that stood out against her usual elegance. What no one but Lorenzo knew was she was the informant who had condemned Jimmy. A few vampires couldn't help but grin as they watched her storm off, swaying like an irritated cat. Dash 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 dash. After the rehearsal, the theater began to clear out. Only a few key people remained to discuss the next part of the evening, figuring out what to do with Dom. Lorenzo couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy about the situation. It was his suggestion and he couldn't back out now. However, his confidence was waning as his doubts continued to grow. Raising a child can be challenging due to the issue of attachment. Dominic was born into the family, but he was born as a human. Moreover, Mac was occupied with various business matters during Dom's childhood, so Lorenzo had to step in and become a father figure. He had been alive for centuries and had never given it a thought. Vampires weren't supposed to have children, so it was never something he had to think about until the boss unexpectedly handed him a baby. To make matters worse, he had the nurturing instincts of a lifeless goat. He had no clue about raising children back then. It had been an absolute nightmare. Lorenzo was relieved that Dom had somehow made it through. He appreciated the person Dom had become mostly. It would be great if the kid could lighten up a bit and not be serious all the time. Then, he could blend in with everyone else. The thought of raising Dom brought even more uncertainty and guilt. Who knew if Jimmy's blood would be his salvation, his demise, or if it would transform him into a vampire snacking monster? That last possibility was enough to make the rest of the family hesitate. They were contemplating Lorenzo's advice. He had presented his arguments, yet he understood their reservations. Papa Mac was the only one who fully endorsed it without any worries. The elderly man could see that Dom was in bad shape. It had been ages since he got the terrible infection at Babylon, and it was slowly killing him. Nobody dared to tell Dom the truth. They all tried to assist him in subtle ways. But ever since he returned from the war, Dom had become resistant to any help from the family. If anyone tried to help him openly, it usually resulted in loud arguments, threats, and fits of rage. Vampires hated tantrums. Mac and his family would have been in trouble with the conservative vampires if they uncovered Lorenzo's plans. On the other hand, Mac was more open-minded and accepting of different ideas. He would go to great lengths to protect Dom, even if Dom didn't like him. It wasn't that Mac valued Dom's life more than anyone else's, but he had the unwavering determination of a father who would do anything for his son. Everyone in the room had experienced Mac's kindness and generosity throughout the years, so they understood his intentions. They knew he would do the same for any of them without hesitation. It would be fine if Dom only needed money, medicine, or some ordinary stuff. But making him a walking cocktail, that's a whole different story. Lorenzo realized the kid was desperate for help, and this was the last option. They had tried everything else, sneaking meds into his drinks, bringing in people who could assist him in different ways, and even offering him alternative, less sketchy, magical remedies. Lorenzo had been working closely with Stein's doctor, Artem, to help those who had suffered from Dom's condition. They had tried everything, even conducting vivisections on the corpses from the Babylon assault, but all they found were painkillers and temporary solutions. Lorenzo was left to figure things out when none of their efforts proved successful. He had enough knowledge regarding Dom's parentage to grasp its uncommon and lethal essence. In the annals of vampire lore, individuals like Dom were seldom acknowledged and regarded as catalysts of immense devastation. Legend had it that if such individuals ever tasted the blood of their vampire progenitor, they would inevitably embark on frenzied rampages that resulted in catastrophic losses to vampire existence. The ancient legends recounted the existence of individuals regarded as abominations, possessing an insatiable craving for the blood of supernatural beings. Additionally, these individuals had the remarkable ability to mend any injury, alleviate any affliction, and withstand damage surpassing the limits of an ordinary vampire. Lorenzo carefully examined the final vial containing Jimmy Blackfang's essence, contemplating the weight of his impending decision. Despite its notorious reputation, he was determined to proceed, fully aware it held the potential to preserve his own life. However, a concern lingered within him. He hoped he would not have to endure the consequences of his choice for too long. With a final glance at his companions, Lorenzo steeled himself, inhaling a trembling breath, and proceeded towards the lobby. Dom had arrived at the theater lobby unconscious. Polina had been assigned to watch him while Jimmy was dealt with. As he crossed the expansive space, Lorenzo saw her maintaining her vigil on a couch across from Dom's, cleaning one of her favorite rifles on the table between them. Lorenzo's approach caught her attention, and her gaze fixed on the black-capped vial he held. Her concerned expression contorted into a disapproving glare. He couldn't help but wonder if she was on the verge of launching an assault. She was well aware of the consequences and had vehemently opposed the transformation of Dom into a monstrous being. Polina's connection with the kid went back to the war. She was fiercely committed to keeping him safe, which had become a defining part of her character and annoyed Dom. Anything that threatened Dom was met with Polina's resistance, and Lorenzo seemed to be a prime source of trouble in her eyes. She stood from her seat before a disassembled gun and positioned herself between the two men. With a sharp tone, she began.
Enough with the jokes, Dami is burning up.
With an exasperated sigh, Lorenzo tried to move past her, but she stood her ground.
Come on, give me a break. I already said I have a solution to this problem.
Your plan is crap. That stuff will hurt him.
Her hands balled into fists. Lorenzo counted.
Listen, we need to get him to down this.
The blonde snarled.
How can we experiment on Dami? What if it kills him? Or worse?
Lorenzo had to inject Jimmy's blood into him before it was too late.
We're out of choices, there's no more time for anything else. Polina, you have to trust me. I have to do this, or it's the end for him.
After a moment of hesitation, she conceded that he was correct. It wasn't her favorite thing to admit, but she had tried everything. She had been the one to add various remedies to Dom's meals and beverages while Jackie was preoccupied. She took a deep breath and wiped away a tear before stepping out of Lorenzo's way. Lorenzo wasted no time in forcing as much of the black blood into Dom's mouth as possible. Dom, still unconscious, fought against it, coughing and spitting out a good amount of the disgusting liquid before slumping back onto the couch. Stepping away from his task, Lorenzo accidentally bumped into Polina anxiously waiting nearby.
Hey, don't you have a squeaky toy to play with or something? I already told you he'll be perfectly fine if this works.
Polina gave an exasperated look.
I eavesdropped by the door. Here unsure how or be if he wakes up. Dating be a beast. I overheard the boss man's creature. He talks about it killing Dami.
Lorenzo was disappointed.
Didn't you get the memo? We vampires are infamous for being monsters, bloodsuckers, night stalkers, pure evil. Some of them probably thought killing Dom would be the easiest solution to the problem.
Polina bore her teeth, looking feral at the thought.
Tear I to lay your hands on him, and I will tear out your heart.
Lorenzo quickly moved Polina away from their patient.
Oh no, Polina. Don't do that. You can't rip out people's hearts like that. Is there a newspaper or something I can use to swat you with?
The blonde was so angry she started growling and cursing in Russian. Then she threw an elbow at Lorenzo, hitting him hard enough that his dental work shook, and he fell in a heap. She then returned to her seat, picked up some rifle barrels, and cleaned them roughly with a ball brush. Lorenzo touched the forming bruise on his cheek and began to smile. Dealing with an overprotective werewolf and a dying child simultaneously was no easy task. Thankfully, he had managed to survive her anger, something not all vampires could say. He found her determination much more impressive than her attractive appearance. After a brief pause, Polina said,
You know, Danny might wake up one day and give you a taste of your own medicine for being so cruel to poor Polina.
Lorenzo casually sat down beside her, chuckling and shrugging.
I've been there for him during his teenage years. Trust me, it's no use. He's tried to attack me before.
Polina smacked him on the arm and exclaimed,
Enough with the dumb jokes. This is serious.
She tilted her head, noticing Lorenzo's cheek turning red, and winced sympathetically. Trying to make it up to him, she quickly grabbed some ice from the bucket containing her copious amounts of alcoholic comfort and wrapped it in one of her gun-cleaning cloths. She offered it to him to soothe his injured face. Lorenzo gratefully accepted the olive branch and gently pressed it against his swollen face.
Don't worry, Lena. He's not going to leave us. It will do the trick.
Dom let out a groan as he adjusted himself on the couch, facing them. Polina observed as Lorenzo approached Dom and examined him.
Looks like the fever's gone down. His heartbeat is slowing. Gotta inform the boss about this.
Polina scowled at him.
What if he wakes up a hungry monster?
Lorenzo was already halfway to the theater entrance.
Tell him there is popcorn in the snack stand.
Once through the double-door entrance, he could barely make out the Russian curses chasing after him. Dash 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 dash. Dom woke up suddenly, feeling a surge of panic. He quickly sat up on the couch, coughing up black spittle and wiping it on his hand. As his eyes adjusted, he realized the world around him was bright and overwhelming. However, the intensity soon faded, and his hangover slowly dissipated. As he heard a scraping noise, Dom glanced up and saw Polina's typical grumpy expression. He then surveyed his environment, but it was more than a glance. He felt everything around him as if his senses heightened. He felt more alive than he had in a long time, and his usual tiredness had vanished.
That nap must have been amazing.
He mused to himself. He found himself at the Pandemonium Theatre, Papa Mac's favorite spot, seeking an escape from his monotonous routine. He had visited the theater a few times in the past. Mac would occasionally spend a night or two here, indulging in the delights of its Nickelodeon. Sometimes, Mac's troupe would put on extravagant shows for a small group of devoted fans. Only those invited could attend, and they spared no expense in decorating the historic building. The actors could unleash their creativity with productions from Shakespeare to Alexander Dumas. Real skulls and bones, amazing stage effects, backdrops, and even real weapons adorned the stage. The fact that they used real weapons was a major attraction for the shows. Vampires played key roles and could be stabbed, chopped, and torn apart to the amazement of the audience, who all loved the incredibly realistic effects. Clients often wanted to keep some of the props as souvenirs. Tarek's skull was the most sought after. The intense competition during the post-show auctions always resulted in a nice boost to the venue's earnings. Papa Mac took over the place after it was abandoned in the 30s when the flappers moved on to fancier establishments. When Dom checked it out recently, he discovered a pile of ownership changes, unsuccessful renovations, and rejected funding applications. It seemed like nobody ever stayed long. He even came across a dozen police reports suggesting it is haunted. The truth had turned out to be much stranger. The whole situation revolved around the thing currently living in the ticket booth. It had fled to America to escape pesky monster hunters in its homeland. It decided to make itself at home in the theater, hiding behind the stage or in the basement. Its relentless efforts to frighten away anyone who showed interest eventually led to the downfall of the theater, leaving it in disrepair. The enigmatic being had an uncanny power to manipulate the ethereal barrier within human consciousness known as the veil. The veil obstructed the perception of mystical entities dwelling within the urban landscape. Employing its extraordinary aptitude, it enveloped the entire edifice in a captivating mirage, evoking a sense of aversion among individuals, thereby distorting their auditory and visual senses. Papa Mac was irresistibly attracted to the peculiar ambience of the location, akin to a moth drawn to a flame. He decided to acquire the property approximately 8 years ago, during the expansion of his business empire solely based on his curiosity. At that time, Dom was unaware of the intended purpose of the place, but everything shifted when the gangster arrived to inspect the premises. Eric's name derived from a character in a Nickelodeon reel who resided in an opera house and went by the name of a phantom persona. His predicament was that Papa Mac could see beyond the deception and relish the outcomes of the entity's endowments. Eric and Papa Mac reached an agreement that permitted Eric to remain in the building as its caretaker while Papa Mac transformed it into an exclusive entertainment venue. The dilapidated interior and outdated equipment were replaced with luxurious red carpets, fresh paint, exquisite embellishments, and state-of-the-art facilities. It was now an exceptional establishment despite the facade Eric meticulously crafted to deceive passers-by. As laughter slowly erupted into fits of wild giggles, Dom's dream was shattered. He scowled at Polina sprawled on a matching couch a few feet away and could not contain her mirth. Despite her uncontrollable laughter, he was not amused and swung his legs off the velvety couch to face her. The surface of the small table between them is adorned with an array of gun parts. Dom quickly assessed that there were at least 3 powerful rifles among them. It was not surprising, as Polina, Papa Mac's top enforcer, had a peculiar obsession with firearms, especially Russian sniper weapons. Her love for guns surpassed her affection for people. Dom had previously encountered similar displays of her firearm fondness and had inquired about her intense fascination with this particular pastime. He recollected being taken aback by her response, as she had boldly stated, "Guns are better than sex, firearms never fail to deliver payload." He knew she frequently pursued men, flirting shamelessly. She constantly bragged about her latest conquest, and how she had left them heartbroken. He had always thought she was obsessed with sex. Papa Mac trusted her with guns because she was a proven crack shot. While shifting in his seat, Dom spotted an empty vial rolling out from next to his pant leg and making a clinking sound as it hit the hardwood floor near his foot. He quickly grabbed it and inspected what was left inside. The pungent odor, dark hue, and thick consistency indicated it contained something he wanted to steer clear of. After regaining her composure, Polina sat up, revealing her figure hugging a tire. However, she avoided her usual flirtatious behavior and feigned interest in the gun parts instead. It piqued Dom's curiosity as Polina never missed an opportunity to taunt him. It was clear something was weighing on her mind.
What the hell is this?
Dom presented the vial to get her to look at him. The object slipped from his grasp without warning, leaving him no time to respond. In a split second, she concealed it beneath her clothing. "Nothing," she stated in her heavy Russian accent. "Do you feel better now? Do you want to harm or kill? Urge to bite others?" After considering her words, Dom reflected on the idea of biting people. Considering the nature of her employer, it wasn't entirely surprising, but he dismissed the thought. Dom attributed feeling hungry to the fact he had been relying on bottled meals for the past few days. He reassessed himself, feeling like he was emerging from the nightmarish haze of the previous weeks. As he reached up to touch his cheek, he discovered that the ghoul's scar from his encounter in Chinatown was present but fading. Interestingly, touching it no longer elicited the familiar pain. His mind had cleared up. It was quite a miracle, but miracles always had a catch when dealing with folks like Polina and Papa Mac.
What did you give me? Horse pills, drugs, or some orange juice?
He quipped. He wished she would stop behaving oddly. She still hadn't lifted her gaze from the table, opting instead to tinker absent-mindedly with a couple of components and applying lubricant to a few of them. After a few moments of working in silence, she decided to avoid answering the question and change the topic instead. Glancing around, she gestured towards the fully stocked island in the lobby. "Why don't you grab something to eat? You need it after feeling sick. Papa Mac will see you soon." Following her hand, Dom's eyes swung around the lobby. He found other couch and table pairings, a snack stand, elegantly carpeted stairs leading to the upper floor theater seats, and 2 walls lined with Nickelodeons. 2 sets of glass double doors flanked Eric's ticket booth. The walls of the front lobby, extending beyond those, were filled with framed movie posters from yesteryear. After realizing Polina wouldn't provide any information, he stretched. He could feel every muscle in his body readjusting itself. He could sense his blood coursing through his veins, his heart beating, and even the slightest movement of his hair. It was as if his senses had heightened beyond normal. A memory briefly appeared but vanished before he could grasp it. The taste of that liquid felt strangely familiar, as if he had experienced it before. As he approached the snack stand, he noticed his steps felt lighter than usual. Surprisingly, the breath in his chest was more refreshing than the years of smoking and drinking should have allowed.
I could get used to this,
he mused, approaching a popcorn vault that stood proudly among the fully stocked snack displays. The elderly man could see that Dom was in bad shape. It had been ages since he got the terrible infection at Babylon, and it was slowly killing him. Nobody dared to tell Dom the truth. They all tried to assist him in subtle ways. But ever since he returned from the war, Dom had become resistant to any help from the family. If anyone tried to help him openly, it usually resulted in loud arguments, threats, and fits of rage. Vampires hated tantrums. Mac and his family would have been in trouble with the conservative vampires if they uncovered Lorenzo's plans. On the other hand, Mac was more open-minded and accepting of different ideas. He would go to great lengths to protect Dom, even if Dom didn't like him. It wasn't that Mac valued Dom's life more than anyone else's, but he had the unwavering determination of a father who would do anything for his son. Everyone in the room had experienced Mac's kindness and generosity throughout the years, so they understood his intentions. They knew he would do the same for any of them without hesitation. It would be fine if Dom only needed money, medicine, or some ordinary stuff. But making him a walking cocktail, that's a whole different story. Lorenzo realized the kid was desperate for help, and this was the last option. They had tried everything else, sneaking meds into his drinks, bringing in people who could assist him in different ways, and even offering him alternative, less sketchy, magical remedies. Lorenzo had been working closely with Stein's doctor, Artem, to help those who had suffered from Dom's condition. They had tried everything, even conducting vivisections on the corpses from the Babylon assault, but all they found were painkillers and temporary solutions. Lorenzo was left to figure things out when none of their efforts proved successful. He had enough knowledge regarding Dom's parentage to grasp its uncommon and lethal essence. In the annals of vampire lore, individuals like Dom were seldom acknowledged and regarded as catalysts of immense devastation. Legend had it that if such individuals ever tasted the blood of their vampire progenitor, they would inevitably embark on frenzied rampages that resulted in catastrophic losses to vampire existence. The ancient legends recounted the existence of individuals regarded as abominations, possessing an insatiable craving for the blood of supernatural beings. Additionally, these individuals had the remarkable ability to mend any injury, alleviate any affliction, and withstand damage surpassing the limits of an ordinary vampire. Lorenzo carefully examined the final vial containing Jimmy Blackfang's essence, contemplating the weight of his impending decision. Despite its notorious reputation, he was determined to proceed, fully aware it held the potential to preserve his own life. However, a concern lingered within him. He hoped he would not have to endure the consequences of his choice for too long. With a final glance at his companions, Lorenzo steeled himself, inhaling a trembling breath, and proceeded towards the lobby. Dom had arrived at the theater lobby unconscious. Polina had been assigned to watch him while Jimmy was dealt with. As he crossed the expansive space, Lorenzo saw her maintaining her vigil on a couch across from Dom's, cleaning one of her favorite rifles on the table between them. Lorenzo's approach caught her attention, and her gaze fixed on the black-capped vial he held. Her concerned expression contorted into a disapproving glare. He couldn't help but wonder if she was on the verge of launching an assault. She was well aware of the consequences and had vehemently opposed the transformation of Dom into a monstrous being. Polina's connection with the kid went back to the war. She was fiercely committed to keeping him safe, which had become a defining part of her character and annoyed Dom. Anything that threatened Dom was met with Polina's resistance, and Lorenzo seemed to be a prime source of trouble in her eyes. She stood from her seat before a disassembled gun and positioned herself between the two men. With a sharp tone, she began.
Enough with the jokes, Dami is burning up.
With an exasperated sigh, Lorenzo tried to move past her, but she stood her ground.
Come on, give me a break. I already said I have a solution to this problem.
Your plan is crap. That stuff will hurt him.
Her hands balled into fists. Lorenzo countered.
Listen, we need to get him to down this.